Welcome to the Tech Talks podcast, another short solo episode today. Today I'm really just going to talk about a lesson that I learned while I was playing football at the University of Guelph, and how I've been thinking about that this week and kind of looking within and asking myself some questions, which is always a fun experiment. So the lesson is not compartmentalizing your life, and that was taught to me by my head coach when I was at Guelph for my first 4 years, Coach Stu Lang. So for anyone who doesn't know much about Coach Stu Lang, he was a successful athlete in his own right, played professional football in the CFL for a number of years, won some great cups, and then he retired and he went into the business world. And he had he was extremely successful in that chapter of his life as well. And when that came to a close, he retired and became the head coach at Guelph. And he was there for, 5 or so years. And his last year was 2015 when we won the Yates Cup. So I think he did a pretty good job there as well. And so this is something he used to always talk to us about, is not compartmentalizing your life. So for anyone who doesn't know what compartmentalizing means, essentially it's you separate your life into different categories or separate little areas, and then you allow yourself to hold yourself to separate standards, we'll say, in each area. So some examples that might make sense is, there's an elite level athlete, high performing athlete, and they hold themselves to X, Y, and Z standard as it pertains to health, nutrition, whatever, because they see how that directly affects their game. But they completely hold themselves to a complete separate set of standards as it pertains to their education, their relationships, their financial management, what have you. So there's this clear divide. Over here, extremely disciplined, extremely focused, willing to apply themselves to the best of their abilities in their area of passion or their zone of genius, whatever. But then there's this separation where they don't hold themselves to that same standard in these other areas of life. So that's one example as it pertains to athletics. You can see this a lot with successful business people as well. You see people who have been extremely successful in their careers, but their personal lives, their health are just garbage, and everything is not looking good, yet they're this extremely successful business person. So there's a clear divide between the two, and that's essentially what compartmentalization means. And it's not always a bad thing, in the psychological world, there are some benefits to it. This is a strategy that people use to help cope with grief, like soldiers coming back from war, or people who are dealing with deaths or serious issues in their lives. This can be a strategy that psychologists use, but it's a short-term strategy. And that's a little besides the point, but back to kind of the lesson and how it was taught to me. Really, the message that Coach Lang was trying to get across to us was that you can't expect yourself to be focused, disciplined, hardworking, all these great things in football, and then not live the rest of your life like that. Saying if you accept complacency in certain areas of your life, at some point it is going to bleed into your football in this example, or whatever it is that you're good at, right? So I'm sure everyone out there they have a specific area in their life that you're really successful at, you're really passionate about, and you love it, and you hold yourself to a certain set of standards. But there's definitely areas, I'm sure, in your life where you're cutting corners and maybe a little bit complacent. And so what his message is that if you want to be truly successful, you can't do that, because that how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So if you're cutting corners in these areas of life, maybe for a little bit you might be able to make it work, but like we said, it's a short-term strategy. Eventually it's going to bleed into this thing that you're so passionate about or that you're so successful at, and eventually it's going to start to hinder your results. So I'm thinking about this week, and then you go down the rabbit hole of thinking, like, what is in your life, like what does your own personal accountability system look like? Or are you systematically looking at yourself and evaluating your actions? Call it maybe a self-audit. So that's something that I try and do pretty regularly because of this idea. So that's something that I did this week, and I started to realize there are some areas where maybe I was cutting some corners, and I was seeing how that was translating into my training, my nutrition, or my business, or what have you. And so it really led me down that train of thought, that, you know, how would my life look differently, or how would things change for me if I took that mindset that I applied to this area of my life and just applied that across all facets of my life? Would my relationships be better? Would my health be better? Would my wealth be better? Would my business be more successful? Probably would be. And so this is one of those things that came up is, you know, remember what Coach used to always talk about, like, you can't compartmentalize. So this is, I guess, a two-pronged attack. Is one, just to kind of share a lesson that I was fortunate enough to learn from a pretty wise and successful man. And then also kind of challenge yourself and ask yourself, do you have like a self-auditing process, or do you actually take the time to look at the different areas of your life and see where you might be cutting corners, or seeing the effects that cutting corners in one area of your life are having on the other area? So I don't know. There's just some thoughts that were with me. And like I said, this is something I want to do every Friday, no matter how uncomfortable or whatever it might be, just something that I'm trying to do so I can get a little bit better. So if you liked it, thanks for listening. But we'll be back here next Friday, hopefully with a guest. I'm trying to get something booked up to talk about some goal setting and go through the goal setting process. But gyms are now open. If you're listening, stay tuned. There's a lot of exciting announcements coming for the Athletes Garage as we are able to reopen within the next few days. So thank you for listening. Have a great weekend.